My name is Dr. Jed Appleruth. I've been working with students about 22 years, and I really firmly believe that executive functioning is one of the most important things we can help our kids with. I think it underlies so much of success, both academically, in high school, middle school, high school, college, work, marriage. If you are better at some of the skills that we'll talk about tonight, it's going to make your life just easier. And so I definitely spend time with my students trying to help them, trying to coach them, trying to understand where they have challenges and how if we work on these skills, it just makes their life easier. Takes away stress, takes away chaos, makes things a little more manageable. And gets better grades, which parents tend to like, but there's a lot more to it than that. It's just it puts kids more in charge of themselves and their abilities and their lives. So I'm a huge fan. It's all about agency and efficacy and feeling good about yourself. And when kids get better at these skills, they tend to feel better about themselves too. So let's jump in to the content. Hold on a second. We'll begin. All right. So in terms of how to conceptualize this, what are these skills? And executive functioning skills, people have called them the hidden curriculum, because if you're good at this, if you have these skills dialed in, it helps you with math, it helps you with physics, environmental science, helps you with French, helps you with your activities. It helps you keep your room clean if you want that. It helps you make sure you don't miss the bus in the morning. All these things, being able to manage oneself, that really is it. To execute, to understand what's important, do things in the right order, sequence, prioritize, inhibit distraction, all these good things. And here's, there are many ways to cut this and frame this. There are different people, let's choose 7 of these skills, or I've seen 12 or 10 or 6, but these are some of the foundations. And it has to do with the frontal cortex. About 2001, I think it's Elkanon Goldberg talked about the new executive mind. And they were looking at parts of the brain that lit up under fMRI scanners when people were doing certain tasks that involve planning and sequencing and prioritizing. And they began to call these things these executive functions, because it's a part of the brain that recruits other resources and helps organize and plan and do things and activate the other aspects. So it really is like the conductor. And so it's planning. The frontal cortex plans ahead for the future. Definitely a lot of future orientation. Prioritization is a big thing. With kids are often doing things, but not doing them at the right time, in the right order. Organization is a big one. People, they lose track of things. They forget, I have to sign up for my classes tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and then you sleep through it, and you're not organized. Goal setting and follow through of losing track of what I was trying to accomplish in the beginning and forgetting that, actually I've made meaningful progress, and that should be reinforcing. Now, time management is a big deal. Kids who go and take a break, what's supposed to be a 20-minute break becomes an hour-and-a-half break, and then suddenly they're behind, they end up cutting into their sleep. Self-regulation is a major piece of how do I manage myself, my energy, my environment. Self-monitoring, just observing, and there are aspects of this in terms of like inhibiting like what you say to other people. Like realizing that I probably shouldn't say this right now in this context with this person, this teacher, XYZ, and that's part of inhibition. And then inhibition is I really want to do this thing, but I probably shouldn't. I really want to go and spend another 2 hours playing video games, but I have a final tomorrow. Can I inhibit that impulse, that desire? And if I can, that is going to be beneficial, that piece of inhibition. And then undergirding all of these 8, which I picked, and they can change and choose more or less if you wanted, is working memory, the ability to hold certain things in your memory store, cognitive flexibility, the ability to pivot, to see, to observe the environment, the context, and change your strategy and your approach, and then self-control. Can I manage myself? My time, because there's always more compelling things, more fun, dopamine-rich activities. My cell phone is always calling me, but TikTok, you can get lost in there, but then I'm neglecting things that are probably more important to me long-term. So it's learning how to recruit and manage yourself and your resources. So you can see why I believe this is a really important piece. I think as a counselor and a psychologist, so much, if you get better at this, it helps everything. All right, so the definition, I mentioned briefly, looking at, parts of the brain which light up in the front, the orbital frontal cortex, but these functions, they're processes necessary for controlling behavior, managing oneself, one's resources, and monitoring behaviors to attain goals. So it's part of being a successful person. Most people who are very successful, they have pretty good EF skills typically. All right, and these are skills. It's not, they develop with time. There's definitely a piece of development. Part of it is you can work on things and improve things and get better at things. It's not just you are innately great at this. And also, we all have a different balance. If you go through that list of, I may be decently good at EF skills, but there are still, everybody has their weaknesses, myself included. And planning, I could be great at planning, or I'm not a planner at all. Prioritization. A lot of folks, they're busy, they're active, but they're doing the wrong thing, and then it's late at night. Whoops, made a mistake there. Organization. Some people are chaotic, some are very precise, achieving goals. For me, like, time management is not my biggest gift out there in the world. And often, people are amazed that, when I make it to things on time, or, I make airplanes, it's often the skin of my teeth. I have a bit of a time optimist orientation, and I think I have time for one more thing, and I really don't. And that's, everyone has their issues, and I'm more aware of it though. But still, everyone has their gifts. This is not one of my biggest gifts. Self-regulation, can I inhibit, impulses to do other things right now, and self-monitoring, being observant, understanding, where I fit, how I'm affecting other people in the room, their perceptions of me, and vice versa, and that kind of piece. So then there's no hierarchy. You can be great at this, and this one is really weak. And so it's not like if we, they are correlated. And typically in my work with kids, when you begin working on some of the major areas of weakness, other areas also lift too. Because really so much of this hinges on self-awareness and reflection, introspection, understanding oneself. And as you begin to get better at that, you begin to start to see patterns, and you become more curious about how you're functioning in the world. Now, if your student has ADHD, they are definitionally, they're lacking in certain of these areas. That's often, looking at how we define ADHD in terms of the attention and distraction, inhibition, other things like that. It's just baked into this. So if your kids have ADHD, they're working with some EF deficits. And many of my students in the past, they were trying to wean themselves off ADHD medications. And it was either we'll take Vyvanse, or we'll take Adderall, or we'll work with Jed. And we're trying to bring this down. And I get that, because part of it is if I get better at these skills, I might have less of a need for the molecules to help with the stimulation of the cortex. Because, it's a balance point. But some of my kids still take their medication. But definitely I've been called in when we're going off the med, and you help, make sure we don't fall into the pit. And I'm trying to give them a bolster and support them. But then I withdraw the scaffold, and then they're on their own. That's the goal always. I like when my students fire me at the end, like, you know what, I got this, I'm good. And that's my happiest note, when my kids are doing great and on their own. So Peg Dawson wrote a book, Smart but Scattered. It's about, this kind of the EF issues. And she broke them into 2 categories. I think it's pretty helpful. So one, on the base level of, EF, response inhibition, impulse control, managing your emotions, being flexible with when things change, being able to have, attention, and then starting things. And then in her categorization, her taxonomy, the advanced skills are more the future orientation, more comprehensive understanding, resources, time, estimation, prioritization, organizing, time management, which really is a complicated piece. So you have to start something, keep your time going, planning, estimating how long things take, persistence. And the capstone of all of this work, which may be why I like it so much, is metacognition. That's a word I first came across in my counseling work. Now it's 15 plus years, but really the awareness of how you think, understanding your mind, understanding what you need, understanding, I tend to fade after this time. I'm starting to, lose my train of thought. I should probably stop, take a break, try something else. It's that seeing your own thinking. It's kind of going up to a higher level and being aware that I really don't know this. I've been studying it, but do I really get this? You know what? I need something else to happen here. And that really is a higher level. And when kids get that, they're off to the races. Then they can go get the right level of help. They can change. They can be flexible, try something else. When they're really aware that I'm learning this, or I'm really not learning this, that's really powerful, that piece of metacognition. And also understanding what you need to learn optimally. When kids really get themselves, like, I need this context, this kind of work, this amount of work, and this amount of breaks for me to learn well, that's amazing. Like, you've learned how your brain works. Good for you. That'll help you forever. And so learning these skills, without question, gives you an edge academically. Period, paragraph, hard stop. but also these things spill over, these things generalize to other areas of your life. Because if you're good at managing yourself, your resources, and avoiding distraction, that'll also help you, with, if you're working on something else, a non-academic activity, in terms of your other activities outside, your extracurriculars, in terms of learning lines for a play, in terms of making sure you do everything right for your internship, interview, or application, making sure all the other things happen besides in the classroom. So, this really helps you in so many ways, which is why, I'm a huge fan again. Now, these EF skills are going to develop at different times for different people. There's not one path that we're all on that we all do develop, but if you've had more than one kid, then you understand that development occurs at different times for different, for your boys or for your girls, or, different levels of everything. And every brain really is distinct. And brains develop asynchronously. There are kids who are really, really brilliant, even in terms of their ability to read or mathematical reasoning. But in terms of, organization, prioritization, the mad genius, it's very common. So certain parts, this part of the brain, super developed, this other piece, not as developed. And we need people who are really gifted and smart, but there's a real problem with goal completion, follow through. They bounce from here to here to here. And then they're unrealized genius. They're so gifted. They have amazing processing speed, cognitive power, but then they're not sticking through, finishing, getting the help they need, and so they don't ever realize their potential. But they're different. If you scan a bunch of different brains, they'll show you different patterns of activation. Now, as you grow, as you mature, the executive functions tend to develop. There's more blood flow in the frontal cortex, and there's more interaction between that and other parts of the brain. As you really, and neurons wire up, the frontal cortex begins to wire more effectively to other parts of the brain with time. You're not fully cooked at 14 or 15. And even if there were no other interventions except for maturation, there's going to be some brain development between 14 and 20 in the vast majority of cases. And I told parents that when their kids, their eighth graders, really grappling all over the place, not following through. Like, if, just without anything happening, by the time they're 18, in most all cases, they're going to be better at this, with obviously some exceptions. But typically you get, you can inhibit distraction a little bit better. It's like, with your 5-year-old versus your 12-year-old versus your 18-year-old, these muscles, they develop. It's skills, essentially, and patterns of brain activation. All right, so there may be periods, though, of high stress as you're waiting for the brain to catch up and grow. And that's where EF coaching comes in. That's where support from parents can help the scaffold when they really don't have, the networks wired up just yet. There's still not anything helping organize, manage. And so some support externally can really help lower stress, lower anxiety, give kids more confidence in themselves. So there are definitely signs when there's challenges here, when kids are having a hard time keeping track of things, their academic work, deadlines, assignments, for sure, or they're, all of a sudden they're staying up real late at night when they should have prepared earlier, and then suddenly, they're missing the whole sequencing of things. Prioritization, again, they're working hard, but not on what's essential, what's due tomorrow, what's critical. Then they're working, but on the wrong thing. They're having a hard time following directions. I've seen this before, where kids, again, they're putting in time, but they missed a key detail. They didn't read carefully, skillfully. They were a bit careless, and then they end up not doing as well. Starting tasks, I have students who have a hard time beginning. Shifting tasks in terms of those transitions, managing their environment, their distractions, their cell phones, which we all have a hard time inhibiting. The cell phones are there and they suck us in, but I've seen it where it's really a problem. We have to, have some better boundaries with our devices. And then impulse management, those kind of things. So sometimes kids may present as they're not motivated, but when there's a lack of motivation on the outside, that often is their lack of skills. And if we gave them more discrete skills, they would get more motivated, and then they have more desire. They feel there's the connection between their energies, their behaviors, and the outputs. And if they really believe that chain, that causal chain, what I do impacts my outcomes, they get more motivated. That's the idea of, if you give a kid some success, it's like, it's not they need more motivation, but they need some success to then drive the motivation. So giving kids some success, helping them, turns the fire on. And that's often, the kids who say, I don't care, I have no interest in this thing. It's often they don't believe they can do well. And then they kind of shut down if they don't believe they can actually accomplish a task. so that, in terms of the valence of their desire. So low EF students may present as being unmotivated, but often it's give them skills, strategies. Here's some quotes I just pulled in from some of my students in the past. Some days I can get a lot of work done. Other days I'm stuck. A big challenge is when I work over the weekends. I get overwhelmed, unmotivated. It's hard to get work done. I get behind. I begin to sink. I've seen kids fall into the hole and start going down, and it all kind of collapses. If I don't do it now, then I mess around on my phone. I doodle, get distracted. My parents yell at me. I end up doing as much as I can. And then, there's one could say, obviously it's a choice, but one that I can't explain. Why would I consciously put myself in the situation? Why would I create this chaos for myself? And that's something where when I've worked with some students, I asked them, like, do you want to have less chaos? Is this working for you? Where you get behind on one assignment, two, you get in this crazy hole and you're digging. You may have an IEP where you can actually turn things in late, but it's like your life then becomes crazy. And is that how you want to live academically, or do you want something else? One of my favorite things is when things get a lot more boring. And I have students who there's no more big holes, there's no more chaos, there's no more crazy catching up. And it's like, wow, this is that better? And the answer typically is yeah, it's better. Unless you love the drama. But a lot of my kids would rather have some more tranquility academically and not have these crazy, massive, piles of work which weigh up on them and their peace of mind. Another student, a high school senior, I'm relatively inefficient at home. Also, my mom is right there, which is taxing, which, you don't want to have, because they're almost, they're ready for college and your mom is not there. You're in college. I'll spend 6 hours at home from my computer, honestly, about 1 hour working. And so that's quite common. I've been seeing this for over 10 years as kids. With the beginning of social media and other things, they're spending 7 hours in front of their computer doing schoolwork, going up till 12:30 at night. But honestly, it's probably a couple hours of real work, and they're doing things in parallel, which makes everything worse. And so, ultimately, we know that our parents don't go with us to college. So if a kid's really leaning heavy on a parent, we have to begin to wean that level of attention and oversight. Same thing as an EF coach. If I become critical to a kid and they need me, capital N, I'm not doing my job very well, because I don't want to be a crutch. The whole point of EF coaching is to make students more independent, because if they really desperately need me to function and do well, then I'm a lousy coach. Then I become, I'd like to work myself out of a job. And as parents, we want to see our kids become more independent and not need us. If we enjoy their company, let's make sure they can stand on their own. So other freshmen in college, I don't know where to start. When I'm overwhelmed, I have 3 assignments. Where do I begin? I put it off. When I have 1 assignment, I get it done. Another kid, I make a list, I begin working. I try to cross things off, but I get overwhelmed. I couldn't get my desk organized because there was laundry. I remember that student. Then there were boxes in the way, so I can't do my laundry. And the calendar on my desk is covered up. So yeah, this was my freshman year. I remember this one's Charlie. And ultimately learning how to manage and structure your environment so so you'll see your calendar always, not behind laundry kind of things. And then finally, another student, these are all former students of mine, some of them several years ago, but some of them more recently. And this kid starts off going great, a couple months, takes a foot off the gas, and then in month 4, it's just crazy. Chaos, I'm frantically trying to catch up. And then, then I get lazy, I need a break, and you're going to rationalize. Missing this class won't be a big deal. I've deserved a break. Then you get in the hole. Then you're in C land trying to grind back to a B. When this student initially, their goals were all A's for the semester. And I actually watched this take place. And you start to rationalize, I've earned a skip day for this class, which I'm really struggling in. So interesting, the thoughts that we have and so forth. So what drives you? Why are you here? It's often midterms, a slump, you have other grades coming. Your kids are just staying up too late. They're starting things at the wrong time. That's what drives you to come to these talks. And then often when they pull back on the meds, that's often a thing that I've seen a big part of that. So also, yeah, if there's chaos, there's a big hole, tensions at home, you're fighting. It's just not fun anymore. If it's not pleasurable. You're trying to do a lot for your kid. You're trying to take over the frontal cortex for your teenager, and then that sets up a very tense dynamic. Kids don't like it. Parents don't like it, and there has to be a better way. All right, so we work with kids at all levels, but ultimately, but if you don't get support, eventually you start hearing the "I don't care, this is stupid," and they stop identifying as a good student thing that happens too. from prolonged frustration and so forth. All right. And yeah, that's all right. I mentioned metacognition, learning about how to calibrating what you need, the environment you need. Self-awareness really does undergird all of it. Learning what I'm good at, learning what I need help at is really critical in high school and college and beyond. And teaching reflections. So much of my work is helping kids explore what happened, what went wrong. You attempted this, you ended up getting 72. Well, you were on this online class. Is your approach working? Can you learn what you have to learn just from YouTube videos, or do you need the textbook? Do you not? Have you learned that online learning for you is very challenging? Is it better for you to be in person and stop taking online classes? Just getting a sense of what's working for you. The way you prepped, how did you prep? When did you prep? How much did you put in? Was get help? All these things. It's all questions. So we'll shift now. We're going to talk about the phases of achievement and accomplishment. And the very first one is starting, task initiation. And there are definitely kids who fall apart on the beginning phase. They struggle. Again, some of them, the kids said, if I have 3 things, I get nothing done. If I have 1 thing, I finish it. So it's at the challenge of how do I start? How do I pick one? How do I begin? How do I jump in? And so beginnings are really important. Some kids are avoidant. They put things off that seem hard or daunting. Others, some kids jump in, depends on your student. And part of it is in terms of how do I begin? How do I start? You ask them, for ideas, their insights, what might be a good place to start for a kid. And then one thing I love doing is really helping kids plan. And this is where I do a lot of explicit modeling with kids, where I show them a different way of thinking about things, kind of starting from the end and back this up. I did that this last week with one of my students who was in high school. And we're working on several things, helping her become more efficient with her homework, helping her make fewer careless errors with all of her subjects, and also helping her get up earlier and not have the mornings be crazy. And so part of this is planning. I was doing something that reminded me, I was a consultant. I used to at McKinsey years and years ago, doing some operational analysis and analyzing every step of a process, like how long, what time does the bus leave? You kept missing the bus. And I have to be, the bus leaves this time. So what time you have to leave the door? And then, okay, then how long for you to get your backpack on, fill up your water bottle, all those things. How long for you to, taking a shower? When do you get up? We actually timed out the entire thing, and her timing wasn't right on. And she was going downstairs too late. And so part of it was when she was getting up. And one of our strategies was we need to have 2 alarms. She only had 1 alarm, and she kept pressing and doing the sleep. It's like, we're going to have a second alarm. It's going to be separate from your other alarm. You have to get up and turn it off. And, let's not have half an hour we're pressing sleep. And then shower takes how long? Doing your hair, we timed the whole thing out. So it's like, you have to be downstairs at 7:35, period, hard stop. You have to be walking out the door at 7:47, hard stop. And so, and let's use alarms. We began, having her use her iPhone, her timers. And so at 7:35, I'm downstairs. At this time, I'm at the door. And now, this is still an experiment. This was last week, but I'm going to find out this week how things are going and is it better. But already she began using the second alarm, and she said it's actually helping. So it's really showing kids how to problem solve. I'm not going to be there forever, but showing her, how do I think about a problem like this? How I think about, and demonstrating very, very candidly the modeling. And so that's important. So planning. So part of it is like, how do I do this? What am I trying to accomplish? And when kids have a bad experience, let's say they didn't prep enough for a paper, or they really, their exam, they got an F on a quiz. Let's step back. What was your goal? Like, where did you start? What were your strategies? What do you want to try next time? What other things do you want to use? And helping them get more reflective, because so many kids, they have a bad experience, a bad outcome, and they just brush it under the rug. Like they're done with it and they didn't learn from it. And to me, every time there's a setback, that's the gold. That's the moment, the gem, we can stop and really reflect. And this is our moment of learning. So you didn't sign up for your classes. You didn't realize there were prereqs for this class. Next time, next semester, how do we learn from this? And it's like, okay, so a week before, I'm going to go through and make sure I have the prereqs. I'll read the fine print. And so there's learning. So setbacks are fine. And I tell parents, don't go in and rescue all the time. Because if you rescue and solve it and do it for them, they're not going to learn. And I'd rather this student learns as a freshman and doesn't repeat it as a junior, make sure they get the lesson. And if you save them from some of the pain of the mistake, they're not going to really learn the lesson and internalize it, integrate it. So this is a bit of, even if they get an F, it's, it's okay in this case if we learn from it and we change it for the future. All right, task persistence is a big deal. My student trying to get more done, get her homework done earlier, get her homework done so she's not staying up so late. And this is, how do I complete something and finish it? So part of it is organization of your physical environment. I mentioned my student who was, stuff was everywhere, his calendar was covered, there's laundry. How do I, make sure I have an organized space? Organizing my academic space, my digital space, these are all important things. And it's really important that students let go of the idea of willpower and they focus more on, have I skillfully engineered my environment to make the behaviors I want to evoke easy? Or is it hard? And if there are distractions on my computer, distractions on my phone, other things that are calling me in, then yeah, it's going to be hard to get work done. Say I have that willpower. Let me reframe that with, you have a poorly engineered environment. Let's make a better environment that isn't so conducive for distraction. And then you don't need willpower at the same level. And so things I need chewing gum, I need music, I have certain playlists I play. When I'm trying to do deep work, my phone is not in the room. And a lot of my kids, I have them charge their phones out when they're really in the zone trying to work. When they're playing, they're on their phones. Phones are great. But trying to do both, I'm on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm trying to do, my work, that's really challenging for anybody. And it makes the work less meaningful. And, it's more of a shallow encoding. You're not really learning at a deep level when you're getting pinged incessantly between my Instagram account or my Snapchat and then my work. So I'm on Discord on this conversation, also trying to do my French. It's like, it's going to be, everything gets worse. So if you engineer your environment right, your bookmarks, know where to find things. I know what's open, what's closed. My students, I always use some apps that help me turn things off for certain times of day on the computer, because I know the brain likes to downshift to easier tasks because cognition and work takes glucose and resources. It's hard, and often we want to find something easier. So rather than doing this advanced hard writing problem, I want to go and play on this whatever website. One of my students recently, her thing is like looking at movies or casting, and that's her go-to thing. Or for me, it may be news, it could be Reuters, it could be a spelling bee. And now I have a lockdown. After 10 minutes, I have a stay focused app which tells me, shouldn't you be working? And I can't do any more spelling bee. But then before I would find I could spend an hour on spelling bee, and it wasn't that satisfying, but it was like compulsive. And so you can have your technology help you avoid your compulsive behaviors. Or a student, if he loves gaming, but if he lost a game that takes 20 minutes, he'd keep playing until he won. And then it could be 4 games until then it's been over an hour. And so his little break became a big break. So learning how to inhibit your distractions, which is really self-knowledge, self-awareness. What are your well-worn tracks? Where do you go to waste time? How do I change this? I use Stay Focused as my app, which really helps me. And then choosing a distraction. If I know that going and playing a game might be 20 minutes or an hour, can I find something which is a little bit more efficient and still gives me a break, which I need? Because breaks are also really, really important. Seth Perler, colleague, friend, talks about make what's hard easy, what's easy hard. And so things that are easy, if I have my distractions on my phone here, make it hard, put it away, put it 200 feet away, charging. So if I want to go and look at TikTok, I have to, change rooms, go downstairs, and make what's hard easier. Have it open, have it, right there available to you. That's really an important piece. Clocks, watches, timers. I have some students like the Pomodoro, little tomato, which you work for 25, take a break. I like using my phone. And so after this time, boom, it rings. I get up, I walk away. Totally fine. There are different, different ways to do it. But definitely when kids take breaks, kids especially who drift, that I'm putting a timer on it. And then time to go back. And for me, like I tell my students, like, when I'm traveling, like timers are essential for me, little alarms I set all the time. Before I give a webinar at night, I have an alarm that goes off and it tells me whatever you're doing, if you're playing with the kids or whatever, to stop, time to get ready for the webinar. And so these are tools I use. So it's teaching kids the tools, how to use the tools you have and technology to your advantage. When it comes to, routines are key to being successful. Of when I do things, when I have this break, then I do this homework for this class. And the more you practice, the more things, they become routine and automatic. And then there's less willpower to go and do the right thing once the routine. Finally, there's finishing, completing well, turning it in on time in a good way. So learning how to get help. Some kids, they hit a wall and they need help, but it's teaching kids how to use their resources, how to talk to the teachers, how to look at them as resources, and communicate more skillfully. Coaching, how do I get help, which will be really important when they're on their own, really important when they're in college, learning how to use office hours, use teachers, and become better at self-advocacy. Very important. And also learning from peers and colleagues, having a study group. Definitely sometimes kids do well. I have a number of students who do better in a context that's social. When they try to study by themselves in their room, they have a hard time. I have students who do way better in a library. They even do it with friends around. One of my students talked about having a body double, that if you're working, then it's easier for me to work. It's like drafting. I'm going to yoke to your focus. I can use your focus, and it's kind of a cue socially. If you're working, I should be working, versus I'm going to go mess around, screw around, and get distracted. So, but some people do way better in their home. Some people do way better in a carousel in a library, in one little space they go to every day. Everyone's different. Some kids do great on their bed studying. There's no right or wrong. It's just knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And so I have some kids who can work with noise all around them. Some kids, noise drives them crazy. And so they need headphones, noise canceling, or silence. It's all about what you need. But I have some students who like some background noise. Everyone's different. So it's understanding the way your brain is built. And there's something, in terms of your sensory cup. Like some students, they have a really small sensory cup. And if there's a clock ticking, or they'll attend to it. And like some kids have a really huge one, and they need some noise to feel comfortable. If it's too quiet, they get antsy. And so it's, everyone's different in terms of how much distraction, how much noise, smell, sound you need to feel comfortable. All right. So other things is using artificial deadlines to really help you. I did this last week. I have a student with 3 term papers as a college kid. And we, getting some self-imposed deadlines in advance of the actual deadlines, understanding, things may go wrong, things may take more time, getting all the sources you need, doing the proofing. So let's break it up. We're gonna have thesis here, research done by this time, first draft here. We schedule it out on his schedule. And that really is a key change, where he showed me here, like, your schedule. So sources completed on this date, 3:30, for, outline completed. But it's actually structured and scheduled versus this nebulous, it's going to get done. I know these are the steps, but I love putting times on the steps. And then they begin to understand time management and how long time estimation. So it's really helpful. And then the checklist, a lot of kids do better. One student says it's motivating as heck when he goes, he writes down, for this session of study, I have to do these 4 things, and he gets to cross them off physically. That little bit of, pen or pencil through a line or check, he says that drives me. So if that works for you, awesome. If not, what I do is after I complete it, I'll move it off my calendar or move it, and there is definitely a reinforcement to satisfy, I did this one. That's good. Helping kids with goal setting, helping kids with both time management, and here is what we're shooting for. Short-term goals, I want to have this done by here. When kids are encouraged to set their own goals, they tend to have more feelings of confidence and competence, to attain and commitment to attain the goal. So having students set the goals, I always ask my kids, like, what are your goals? And we modify, we course correct. It may be, I want to get all A's, but then now it's April. It's like, all right, looking at where are things in business, where are things with psychology? Do you want to recalibrate? Is now like a high B okay, or just a B, or is, let's stay away from the C's? But things shift and move, but I like kids having their own goals. And when I begin my sessions, I go back and I reinforce, here are the goals that you've set for yourself. How are we doing? How are we tracking? They're specific, they're measurable, there's a time horizon on them, and they tend to be attainable. Some kids come in, I want all A's, but wait a minute, you're on academic probation, you had 3 F's last semester. Is that a reasonable goal? Or, and it may be, but very often that's a little bit idealistic, optimistic. Can we find something that really, corresponds more with your past performance and better, but not going from 3 F's to all A's? It's helpful. So you begin to feel like you're on a failure if you aren't getting the, versus like, what? How about we shoot for, at least a 2.8 to get you off probation, or a 3.2. And then beyond that, lovely, but not I don't have a 4.0, I'm a failure, that kind of thing. So be mindful of what they're, what they're aiming at. When they have victories, help reinforce that, what their behaviors were tied to the outcome, like, well done. And I always say, what did you do to achieve that outcome? That was great. You ended up getting an A on the quiz. What did you do? And it's not, I got lucky or whatever, but I want them to attend to it, be mindful of what they did to achieve the outcome. So they begin to see that causal connection. My behaviors drive outcomes. I'm an agent, and this is what I do. And I learn from mistakes, and I learn from when I'm positively achieved. So the language of attribution control is important, and not, I got lucky, whatever, easy class, dumb teacher. Like, no. What did you do? And I tell them, you're going to have hard teachers. You're going to have a teacher, my student hates her math teacher. Great. So your math teacher stinks. I'm with you on that one. But guess what? You're going to have bad teachers in high school, in college. And it's not, well, I'm going to get a bad grade. Like, no. Giving away your power to the randomness of, you got a bad teacher in this section. No. So when you have a bad teacher, what's our next move? What's our strategy? How do we, do we need help, get help? What does it look like? I have a student who can't stand this online class. So, well, you're up for the content. How do you learn it? Do you buy a different book? Do you go online? Do you use all the other people's study guides? If you can't learn from this teacher, how do you learn? I've had kids who can't understand their teacher. And it's like, well, how do you solve this? We go get a copy of their class notes. How do you, versus just giving up of, oh, I'm unlucky. And so it's getting back to attribution, to, self-management, and then what can I accomplish? Agency, not luck or randomness. Failures are going to happen to kids. Setbacks, to a varying degree. Some kids, a failure is a C. Some kids, a failure is, I got an F. And then, what did you learn? What mistakes happen? How do you course correct? What are the lessons of this? That's the key. So you don't make the same mistake when you're in college or beyond, or grad school, whatever it is. And it has to do with curiosity, because again, failure is fine. I have students that they forgot this thing, they screwed up, they missed, didn't turn it in. Okay, what did we learn? And as parents, if you can come from that place of curiosity, not judgment, not shame, it's a big deal. Because my students, I want to make sure they see me as an ally. Like, I'm on your team, not you're less than, you let me down. And so that frame of curiosity is really a big deal. Like, we're all scientists, and I always say, we're going to try this. We're going to try this with the 2 alarms. If it works, great. If not, try something else. We're going to try this thing with a new timing and alarms getting out in the morning. If it doesn't work, we'll try the next thing. So it's all just a series of experiments. We're a scientific method, trying stuff. You want to have them become less rigid, more flexible. You can try, because things are going to happen. This teacher, what worked in this class, what worked in Spanish 1, may not be effective in Spanish 2. This teacher was all about the textbook. The teacher would never use a textbook. How do I adapt? How do I shift? How do I course correct? And having some tolerance for frustration, because things aren't always easy. How do I take on new challenges and be able to handle some frustration as I'm learning and growing? It's more of a growth orientation. And don't jump in to always fix it. As a coach, as a parent, we often know the answer, but letting them come to it, supporting, structuring, asking questions is better for their sense of self and problem solving. You want them to identify as, I'm a good problem solver, not I know how to do what my dad says, my mom says, I can follow Jed's advice. But no, do you know how to solve your own problems? Because to me, the biggest compliment is when they fire me and they're like, I've got this, I'm good. I got that to me is, I love it. I'm happy. And so, yeah, before you jump in, empathize, connect before you go and fix the problem. Let them own their setbacks. They're going to happen. No shame, no judgment. Other things with working memory, with transitions. This is often a thing where kids, when they're going from this activity to that activity, or from, something even between classes, how do I pivot? How do I shift? How do I not forget my gym bag? One parent, like the kid kept forgetting the basketball. How do I make sure I remember to bring home the basketball when I go to the gym? And it's like, okay, what are our options? Can we use our phone? Can we have a reminder pop up? Basketball. Can I use something, a rubber band? Like, what can I write down the word basketball? Whatever it is, what's going to help you make sure you don't forget this, because it's been an issue. And helping them work with the memory that they have, and so forth. There was a question, will I be sharing the slide deck? Yes, I will. Or actually, you know what? I'll be sharing the presentation. So we're sharing the video. And so I think we stopped sharing the decks, but now we do share the presentations in terms of the recordings. That's the word I wanted to use. So there are different levels of organization. your thoughts, your physical space, digital space, and organizers, planners. I was very happy. I pushed my kids to get a planner. That's one area where whether they're using something in paper or they're really committed to using their calendar on Google or their iPhone, I want to see things in writing. I want to see things in your memory. I want to see structure, when to do things, what's due for, for that day, the next day. But, things are organized. It's really important to help kids get organized. And now I work more remotely, but it used to be, I would see my students, they come with their backpacks and I look and things were crumpled, things were, we go through their folders. Now I could talk them through that, but I used to actually help them like where do you keep your homework? Oh my, it was on some piece of paper loose. Like, no, it has to live somewhere always. That can't be on a loose thing, which you throw in, it takes time to find it. Homework has to live in a certain place to have a home. Everything needs a home. You don't have piles everywhere. Good habits, helping nudge them until they become more automatic. And the system that works for a student may not be the one that worked for you or that works for their sibling. Some kids love paper. I have kids who love big calendars with big things on them. They can see it over the course of a month. I have kids who it's all digital all the time. And all I care about is what they're going to use. If it gets used, then it's going to, that's all that matters. This is an amazing system, but if you don't use it, it's worth nothing. And what works for me doesn't work for all my kids. Some kids like pencils, some ink, some big things, some color coded, whatever you need. As long as you help create it and help learn how to use it. And the big planners, some of my students do have everything on their phone, but also they have the big dates, big test, big paper on a desk calendar or a wall calendar. That's great too. And even if your parents can see it, but it's like, I know I have this big thing due here. So I never forget if I'm going to go out and play on this weekend, but they have this big thing to on the Monday. So it's helping kids shift from a what's due tomorrow to looking at this week, like what's next week, this week. They're beginning to think about time and think forward a little more than I've had kids come to me like, oh, well, I have this tomorrow. I have no idea, but I know, I have this homework, but my test, I don't know. It's sometime in the future. I try to spread it from the future is tomorrow to the future is like, oh, I know in 5 days I have this thing due. And they begin to think like that, more strategy. I work with my students to help them plan their homework sessions. And we do this is from an actual kid of mine, where what do you have, for tomorrow? And he's like, I need help prioritizing. So we'd actually lay everything out. I have to study this. This is a kid becoming a pilot at this pilot school. And I have to study my checklist. Urgency, very urgent. It's due tomorrow, half an hour timing, taking a break. I have psychology. It's not that hard, but it's relatively important. It's short and sweet, 10 minutes. Humanities paper, about an hour. Middle important, take another break. I have rhetoric. Discussion is low, but kind of hard, half an hour. And then I have things that can get pushed. So if anything here took longer, where I did the critical things first. And also in terms of the cognitive difficulty, like the really hard thing, the biggest cognitive lift, I want to do it early. Don't save the really hard thing for the end. When you've depleted your cognitive stores and your glucose is lower, save the easier, more automatic kind of tasks for the end. And also, critical things first, harder things first, and then built-in breaks. And so I think that's more the same. This was like a longer session for my student, looking at how to break up all the stuff, physics, all these things, talk to a student. And there are other things too, where it's not just academics, where we're filtering in, I have to do all the psychology homework, all that stuff, but also talk to a student about next semester, look at this credit for research outside of school, all these things, then go play. So we have a pretty big session, but then there's still playtime built in. All right, and so it's important that there's the division between when do I work, when I play. Again, if you're commingling the two, it all takes longer and is done less skillfully. So when we're playing, we're playing. When we're working, which is often a thing that you have the kids pry the phones and put them and charge them, but they realize like we're going to experiment and see if things are better without the phone there. Exercise is really important for a lot of my kids. And actually there's evidence of research that your EF skills become more honed, more fine-tuned when you are in fact doing cardiovascular fitness. You're able to plan better, think better when you're getting plenty of oxygen to the front of your brain. But moving your body, it's very beneficial. So, and I have kids who they don't do their homework until they go play basketball, or they'll do a break in between after 2 hours, move your body, go to the gym, then come back. So moving your body is part of doing well academically. And then integrating breaks into your work sessions, taking breaks. Ideally, you can move versus going and playing a game or going on, your phone. But either way, breaks are still really paramount. And then you're almost at the end here, like balancing all the priorities when I'm working with students. I ask my kids always, like, what do you want to accomplish this semester? What are you going for? And a lot of my kids, it's academic achievement, but also I have kids who are like, I want to have fun. Freshmen in high school, freshmen in college. Like one of my stated goals is I want to have fun. I want to enjoy this moment, not just get a grade. And if I'll sacrifice a 4.0, if I can get a 3.6 but have more fun, that's a win. And so it's important you understand what game they're playing. The priorities of having time with your family, time with their friends, stimulation, play, make sure there's enough play in there. So it's not just schoolwork, which kids can burn out if it's purely academic. And then, looking at that balance for kids, but think about, the whole picture, the whole package, not just, the GPA. Very important for kids. And finally, one of my things I often do with kids when they're working with EF skills is I reduce things. Is if there's crazy and chaos and there's too much, how do I reduce? And I've had many students, even like really bright kids at University of Michigan, like they're trying to do a bio and a bio lab and a chem lab, they're pre-med. Like, what if we scaled one of those back? Because you want to have fun too, and then suddenly everything gets better. And so let's push this to the summer. I've had a number of kids, let's push the really hard math for the summer, for next year. And then there's less stress and chaos. So that's an EF skill too, of understanding, what can I handle? That self-awareness. And there's too much on my plate. How do I reduce? And what can I move? What can I, shift or push off? And that's a real life skill. If kids learn this now, that's going to help them forever. At Appleruth, we are interested in the science of learning and the art of human connection. And we do several things: academic tutoring, test prep, and EF coaching. That's part of our work. And we're going to just launch a quick poll. If you don't mind, just take a minute. And it'll take you all of 25 seconds to answer this poll. Are you a student, a parent, a teacher? And then, what grade, or freshman, sophomore? Click one of those buttons. And then, is there any area that you would like any support in? And would you want someone to reach out? And that's it. And I'll take you all of 25 seconds and then close it out. And then finally, I think now we have a little bit of time for some Q&A. So we got 11 minutes. What can I help with? What questions are outstanding? I'll let you have a minute to type any questions in the field. All right, another 15 seconds or so. And if no questions, that's all right. Do you do EF coaching for adults? We do it for, we've done this work through college and grad school. It's typically been in an academic context. And so for sure, we integrate elements outside of life, outside of academic life. But there's always been at Appleruth a foundation in working with these students. There may be a point in time where we expand this though, where we do coaching beyond, because definitely, as you can tell, how do I structure, how do I manage, how do I stay on top of things? These are life skills. But right now at Appleruth, our coaches have really been trained for working with in the academic context predominantly. How many sessions do high school students usually need for EF coaching? They vary. Some kids, I've worked with one like 6 hours, and that was the package. And then they felt like they were off the running. Some kids 10. I've seen kids, some students even like for over the course of more than a year, but things really downshift. Where at the beginning it's 45 minutes. By the end, we're doing 15-minute check-ins. How's it going? Things good. And all right, see you in a week, see you in 2 weeks, see you in 3 weeks. And so, but typically, I mean, if there was an average, which I don't have, I could throw a number out. Maybe it's, 12 to 15. But again, these aren't like hour sessions. Some of them, most of mine are half an hour or even shorter. My parent, but I went back to grad school, sure, absolutely right. Because trying to balance all the pieces, trying to balance the course load, as well as the other obligations you have, yeah, I think that would work. Because it's definitely part of, the work. How does academic tutoring work? It's just whatever area of, if we give a lot of math, and STEM and sciences, but also we teach kids how to writing skills. And so you meet, it's the context of the work you're doing for high school or for college or for grad school or middle school. And it's really framed in terms of what are you working on now? Where you need help, and we build skills, we look for gaps, and we try to build competencies for our kids. But yeah, we meet, it's typically online. Some of it is in person, but the majority of our work now is online. But we use cameras and systems, and we use Zoom. My son liked this and wants to watch the recording. But oh, well, that's pretty cool. Thanks very much. I like that. That's great. How much can a student with ADHD improve without meds? I would say quite a bit. And I've mentioned I'm working with like one student now who's met the meds to turn them off because they were having a negative effect on personality, and he felt uncomfortable with other kids, and socially he was having a negative social impact. And so the meds were helping him focus, but there was a cost, and often there is a cost. And so the idea is, can we build skills, have someone help oversee? And my experience of it is, yes, this is actually working pretty well. So my experience is that, yeah, you can, in certain cases, at least titrate down, if not eliminate the meds entirely, and use some resources and skills. So you need less if you learn how to focus yourself without the stimulants, how to manage your environment and yourself a little better. Okay. And do you tutor Calc 3? Yeah, we have people who are PhDs in math, so we can tutor pretty much any math. We have very, very sharp math folks. Okay. Time for any more? Any other questions? Okay. All right, y'all. I think that may be a wrap. So thanks for coming out tonight. And if you need any help with any of these things, that's what we do. It's our work. Hope you all learned something. Please feel free to share the link when it comes or watch again. And there'll be more of these webinars. I have several more this month. So, all right, y'all. Take it easy. All the best. Good night.